I'm Tom, and on the weekend we saw Shakur Stevenson take on William Zepeda in what was actually quite an anticipated match. The reason why that was quite an anticipated fight is because everyone ducks Shakur Stevenson, and you can say what you want, right? But Tank Davis won't fight him. He wants none of that. I don't think we'll see Devin Haney do it. He's having to look up at someone like Conor Benn to fight him now. He's proven that he'll fight people. They don't want to fight him, and Tank is glorified by the US, and I really don't see why. He's a scumbag of a person, he's an overrated fighter, and he doesn't fight anyone. And now he's being looked at as some glorified boxer, but in reality, Shakur Stevenson is the person you should be looking at. Shakur Stevenson, a dad who's so proud of his daughter, a loving husband, fiance that proposed to his wife, in the ring. That's who you should be glorifying. Also, a fantastic pound-for-pound boxer, the best defensive boxer in boxing currently. That's who you should be glorifying. But for some reason, you don't. And what we saw was he proved by taking on the person with the highest output in boxing currently, took him on and he schooled him. People, before we jump into that any deeper, make sure you click subscribe. On a push for 1,000 subscribers, very close. Click the subscribe button. I've seen a lot of people, and I am, to be honest, inclined to agree at least somewhat, say that the scorecards don't reflect the fight. The judges had it wider than it was. And yeah, I think that's fair enough. I don't think the scorecards were quite reflective of the fight. It makes it look a lot wider than it was, and it wasn't that wide. But I do think it was one of those fights where it was competitive, but it wasn't close. I think if you watch it back, Shakur did win most of the rounds. They were competitive rounds. Shakur, especially that third round, for example, Shakur was taking shots, was taking hits and having the pressure put on him, walking back to the ropes. Absolutely, they were competitive rounds. But they were rounds that I do think Shakur won nearly every one of. It wasn't something that he found easy. It wasn't that he walked through the fight, but it wasn't really a close fight. It wasn't like I was going into the 8th going, it's 4 apiece here. I was going into the 8th thinking, yeah, look, Shakur hasn't had it all his way and he hasn't found it easy, but what he has done is nicked every round in the last 30 seconds. We see Usyk do it a lot. Bivol does it, where you just, you keep the fight competitive the whole way through, the whole round. You keep the rounds competitive the whole way through, and then that last 30 seconds, you just do enough to just nick the rounds. And that's what we saw Shakur doing. And I do think the scorecards, whilst not telling the story of the fight, were fair scorecards because it was a competitive fight, but not a close fight. People say that Shakur Stevenson is scared to engage, that he's one of those Tom and Jerry fighters that runs around the ring, being chased, setting off pot shots. What we saw on the weekend is that isn't true. He's more than happy to stand there, engage, take shots to give shots and try and dominate the middle of the ring. What I will say is that I actually think that's not his style, but I actually think he looks really good doing that. I preferred him stood in the middle of the ring, getting those shots off than I did when he was back against the ropes. Back against the ropes for 5 to 10 seconds, fair enough, but he was there for sort of 15 seconds sometimes, which perhaps is a bit too long. Other than that, I actually think the style, whilst it's not really him, works for him. He's shown us that he can box in multiple ways. He has multiple different avenues and aspects to his game. Something that a lot of people said he didn't have. He was just a scared fighter. I never thought that was it. I think, look, he had his hand surgery, and I think that put him off going sort of toe to toe. But also, you don't need to. If he can win fights defensively, why wouldn't he? And he showed that he's got multiple different game plans that he can suit into. What Shakur did was meet Zepeda head on. It wasn't just defense, it was meeting him head on, meeting fire with fire. And what we had was the person with the best defense in boxing in Shakur meeting the person with the best output in boxing, Zepeda. It was the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. And what we saw was that Shakur's defense is enough to make even somebody with the best output in boxing not only miss a lot, but actually Shakur landed more shots than Zepeda did. And he threw, like 200 less. And he still not only landed more as a percentage, but just flat out landed more. And he landed like 150 more. It wasn't even close. He landed like 150 more punches when he threw about 200 less. That is crazy numbers. The way he adjusted throughout the fight, the way that his defense got better and better and his attack got better and better, and he adjusted to what Zepeda was doing throughout the fight, I think was fantastic. And what I also think is I don't think he was hurt in that third round. I've seen people saying that he was nearly knocked down, he was caught. I don't think he was. I think it was a slip, and I think he was caught off balance. Look, that's neither here nor there. In the end, he wasn't knocked out. And if he was hurt, it's even more impressive that he was able to cruise through the rest of the fight the way he was. I get you might want knockout boxing. I get you might want to see knockouts. I understand that. But what we saw was a boxing masterclass from one of the best boxers, certainly pound for pound, on the planet right now. You have to sit back and enjoy it. If you didn't like the fight, I get it. Fair enough. But what we saw was an undeniable masterclass from Shakur. And we know that Tank Davis isn't going to fight him. I think Tank Davis should not be glorified. I think he's a scumbag of a person. And I think he's a running scared boxer. Whereas you've got Shakur, who's proven that he will fight anyone, wants to fight anyone, is a fantastic person and an even better boxer. America, get behind him. People, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff works, people. Peace.